Welcome again to another program of Mazungumzo. This is your host, Dr. Gilbert Githere, coming to your homes with another session of Mazungumzo. This time we are dealing with economics, what's going on, there's inflation, prices are going up, and the economy is actually undergoing a paradigm shift. What worked in the 1940s is not working now. And the problem of value after its foundation. Political economy was built in a way that was relatively stable and user-friendly when it came to defining value. In that older horizon, value emerged from human activity and the social relationship that organized production. For centuries, this framework helped explain markets, wages, and capital. So you can see, as you remember your economics, there is capital, there is land, and labor. And those were the three entities that people utilized to produce value. Anything you produced using land, capital, and labor had value. You didn't ask somebody, how am I going to get my produce to have value? If you use those three entities, what came at the other end, that was the input, the output, was a production which had value. Yet, in the present century, that explanatory order has weakened. In automated systems, financial calculations, algorithmic processes, and digital infrastructures increasingly operate independently of human intention or immediate understanding. The categories of political economy still survive in speech, policy, and institutional habit, but they no longer adequately explain what they now measure. This chapter argues that classical political economy has reached conceptual exhaustion. It remains historically important, but its explanatory power has been overtaken by new technical conditions. Things have changed so much. The entities which seems to work together harmoniously, land, labor, and capital, they are no longer in sync. And for that reason, the economy is not doing well. There is something seriously out of sync. And this is what I've been searching. Because until the input synchronizes with output, the economy is going to remain out of kilter. The Keynesian theory is not working. Maynard Keynes, the fiscal policy of Maynard Keynes, is not working, especially in the digital era. We're going to get into that detail. That's what I'm introducing to now. This is just introduction. Because it is very, very important we synchronize the entities so that what we input will give us output, not fictitious surplus, as Karl Marx called it, and other economists. Fictitious surplus. labor as the first ground of value. For centuries, labor stood at the center of value theory. In classical and Marxian tradition, labor held this position because it was scarce, irreversible, and socially mediated. Labor had those values. It was scarce. So when it is input into capital and land, we got value. The time required to produce a commodity helped determine its value. Karl Marx, analysis of capitalism, further argued that labor was misappropriated through exploitation and undervaluation. You remember this Capital. Marx looked at the lords and the serfs in Europe and how the lords and the landowners exploited the serfs, the workers. And that was because of the undervaluation, allowing capital accumulation to expand. Because you are paying less to the laborers or people who are doing the work, and you are keeping more for yourself. The landlord were exploiting the workers. And that's what brings the revolution in the Soviet Union in 1918. That's how USSR, the Soviet Union, comes up. That's another story. In that intellectual world, labor appeared as the primary productive force. Time mattered, capital mattered, and exchange mattered. But labor remained the privileged ground through which value entered the system. Value, when you take capital and land, and you invest in planting, let's say, coffee, or you plant cotton, or you plant turnip in the Netherlands. When you harvest it, the labor has given it value, for they cultivated the land, they planted the seeds, and then they harvested, and they sold it to the market. That's a produce with value. We have stopped to produce something tangible. We are producing money. We are producing money, but we are not producing merchandise to support the money. The hedge funds, the futures, and the stocks, they have no backing production. We're going to get into that. This is just the introduction, and I'm not going to be very long because this is going to be a long session, because it is going to take us into the cryptocurrency and searching how the digital economy is going to have a valuable production to support it. That's where I'm going. So it's a long journey. And that's why I took some time. I took some time to prepare for this journey. And we're going to go until we're going to reach to the mining of the Bitcoin. Because that's the digital currency coming into the market. But what we don't have is the product to support it. So when we produce that product and we produce the Bitcoin, which is going to be the gold of the 21st century or post-modernity, what is that production which is going to support it? 3D production. are we going to join the two so that the economy is driven? You input here, you do the mining of Bitcoin, and on this other side, it has a tangible production to support it, a legitimate economic system. That's what we are searching. Automation and the displacement of labor. Automation does not merely reduce the quantity of labor required for production. More radically, it undermines the foundational role labor once played in defining production itself. When you automate, you change completely the concept of labor. Even how you define labor, once automation kicks in, cybernetics, is completely different. And that's the problem we are having. Let's say, for example, you enter an automated train or automated aeroplane. Simulated is a simulated travel from New York to Los Angeles. You get into a plane. Simulation. You pay $300, let's say the fare, from New York to LA. Then you sit in the plane with the pilot, and then you switch it on and it moves. The simulation is so real because you even see the clouds passing and you feel the feeling. There is a mental state that you're traveling, but you're not. And then you see you have arrived in LA. But when you alight, you are still in New York, in LaGuardia. Your mental state has gone through a simulation. You have traveled, you have paid rent, you took even some coffee when you're in that trip. But the thing is, you didn't go anywhere. That's the economy we are having. You can see the mess we are in. We are living in a simulated situation of automation. Jean Bourdieu, in his book, The Simulacra, I discussed that book sometime in 1983. I think he's a postmodernist. Jean Bourdieu. If you go back to the sessions I covered, you will find I had that session. And it's a very interesting piece. And you can see when I do a session like this now, because I'm going into the details, it's philosophical, it's economics, it's social, it's geographical, it's a whole paradigm shift. We are undergoing a paradigm shift, just like an industrial revolution. We are actually in that stage where we are in transition. That's why everything feels confusing, because we are living partially in a simulated world of automation, and we are still in modernity. We are in a plane, we understand the plane, but is in a simulation mode. Our life is a simulated mode. And until we connect our simulated mode with the physical world externally, we are going to remain very confused. And Jean Bourdieu calls this situation, that mood, vertigoous. You feel as if you have a vertigo. The difficulty is that utility Oh, excuse me. I think I went. Machines can now operate independently for long durations, producing outputs that were previously inseparable from human effort. Firms have attempted to retain labor so that workers and machines operate together. Yet, the long-term tendency is that automated systems increasingly determine the throughput, what comes out, timing, and even evaluative criteria. In such settings, labor does not fully disappear, but it is displaced from its former position as the unquestioned measure of economic worth. That explanation there is what I want you to digest, especially the people who are going to use these facts that I'm putting out here, for intellectual purposes and academic purposes, because these are things you can utilize to be able to come up with a format, with a paradigm. The Thomas Kuhn incremental development and paradigm shifts, which are thoroughly calculated, scientifically legitimized. This is what we are looking for. How is the digital economy going to catch up with reality? It must, otherwise we are in a quagmire. We are in this roller coaster, which is vertiginous, tiresome, and very, very confusing. I'm not going to deviate so much because we're going to keep in this section. Until now, we continue next time. This is your host, Gilbert Githere, saying bye-bye, and we're going to continue from there, from automation. We're going to go now, utility and the failure of subjective value. Because utility has stopped to be objective, it has become subjective. Utility is a mental state, is not something you can touch. And in studying consciousness, utility itself, people tend to think as if it is objective. No, it's not objective. It is very subjective. You're feeling satisfied because of this product. It is user-friendly. It's a mental state. And we're going to go into that and how it affects the economy we have right now, because most of the satisfaction people are feeling when they invest in hedge funds and stocks is because it's a mental state. It's like an addiction. We are involved in a form of global addiction. We are using mental states of individuals, states, to kind of satisfy something which has got to have a tangible support on the other end. We cannot live permanently in simulation. Thank you very much. Until we come to that point, this is your host, Gilbert Githere, saying bye-bye until we meet again.